Next up, we got a couple from a singer who I've talked about before. He's my favourite songwriter ever. I've got 2 of his vinyls. I had 2 before this anyway. Yeah, I've talked about him quite a few times. I have a tattoo of one of his album covers. It is Elliott Smith. First up, I got his self-titled album, which is his 2nd album he did. Not one of my favourites, but it's still a really, really good album. It's the more lo-fi sort of acoustic sound that he was known for, before he kind of changed that up with albums like EXO and Figure 8. His first 2 albums are kind of just lo-fi acoustic, just guitars, a little bit of electric guitar in there, and bass and drums on some songs, but for the most part it was just his voice and an acoustic guitar, and it sounds beautiful. It's probably the most depressing album of his career. It's the only one where listening to it genuinely makes me really miserable, because it's just really upsetting at times. A lot of the songs are really dark and depressing, but they're also incredibly beautiful. It's got some of my favourites by him: Needle in the Hay, Christian Brothers, Southern Belle, Single Farming, Coming Up Roses. Yeah, that's about it. Alphabet Town I love as well. Yeah, some of my favourites he's ever done. I also really like the album cover. I don't know what it is, I just love the album cover. Yeah, really great album. And the other one I got of his is one that actually was on sale in HMV. That other one was, but I had already gotten it at that point. Interesting story about this one actually. It took me ages to get it. I originally ordered it, when was it? It must have been the beginning of June. I ordered it from someone, and it arrived, and they sent the wrong vinyl. They sent me an Etta James vinyl. Don't know why, but yeah, I returned it, got my money back eventually, but I then went away to Download Festival, and kind of just completely forgot that I was supposed to get it, until like a couple months ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I was going to get that. So about July-ish, I decided I'll buy it again. And then it got to, no, it would have been August I got it, and then it got to last month and it still hadn't arrived, so I messaged the seller and was like, it hasn't arrived yet, and they were like, okay, no worries, we'll send you a new one. And it took about 2 or 3 weeks, but it finally came. So yeah, massive struggle getting this album, and it turns out I could have got it for like £6 cheaper in HMV if I just waited a little bit, so yeah, it's pretty good. And the next one I got was on sale. It was originally £25, I got it for 17. It is From a Basement on the Hill. I love this album, it's one of my favourites of his. It was the last album of new material he did, minus the New Moon compilation, which was a bunch of songs recorded from the self-titled and Either Or sessions that didn't make those albums. But yeah, this is the last album he worked on before he passed, and it was actually released after his death. It was originally supposed to be a double album, and obviously he died before it could be finished, so the producers and engineers went into those original tracks and just salvaged what they could out of it to make a full album. Apparently there was a lot of really, really interesting ideas that were never finished, and a lot of stuff that, although sounded really great, it wasn't perfect yet, and they didn't really want to release something that he wouldn't have been proud of. So there was a lot that was lost out of those sessions, but we ended up getting 15 tracks on the final album, and it's just beautiful. It takes a much rougher, more hard rock sort of edge than some of his other albums. It's kind of more reminiscent of the stuff he was doing with his band Heat Miser in the early to mid 90s. And there are some really great hard rock songs on there, kind of take a lot of sort of grunge influence from him as well. Songs like Coast to Coast and Shooting Star especially, but there's some really pretty softer songs, some acoustic songs on there as well, and some of my favourites include Pretty Ugly Before, A Fond Farewell, Twilight, A Passing Feeling, Memory Lane, Little One, and the final track, A Distorted Reality, is now a necessity to be free. It's an incredible album. I hadn't actually listened to it until a couple years ago. I listened to all his albums about 4 or 5 years ago, I think. It's probably much sooner than that, but I'm just taking a wild guess. Except for this one, because the way I kind of looked at it is that if I listened to all his stuff, then there'd never have that feeling of listening to something for the first time again, because he wasn't going to be doing any music anymore, because obviously he's not with us anymore. So yeah, I wanted to keep stuff where I hadn't listened to it, so in the future I could stumble upon it and it would be the first time listening to it, and I'd have that first time experience with something of his some of his music again. So I eventually caved and listened to the album and the New Moon compilation. Luckily there are some songs still I haven't heard, so I still got that feeling, because there is a bunch of like demos and stuff that he did, a bunch of songs that he recorded and never released. Most of what he's recorded in the studio has now been released in various bootlegs and stuff. There was a collection, I can't remember, I think it was the Grand Mal or Mal collection or something, which has like all of his unreleased songs, and some that was released on like B-sides and stuff, and it's just a single instead of on an album and stuff. So it's got things like the song Miss Misery, which he did for the Good Will Hunting soundtrack, on there, and some B-sides as well, like I Don't Think I'm Ever Gonna Figure It Out, things like that on there. But yeah, From a Basement on the Hill is one of my favourites. I'd say it's up there for me with albums like Either Or, EXO and Figure Eight. Some of my favourite albums ever written, ever recorded by anyone. I love this album. It's one that every time I listen to it, it hits me straight in the gut. I just adore it. It's one of my favourites, and I'm really glad to own it on vinyl. Finally. Only 3 more left. The next 2 I haven't actually got a lot to say about anyway, because I've not... This one I haven't heard, the other one I haven't heard in ages. I've only heard it once. Yeah, these 2 I got on a whim. I looked on Amazon, HMV's website, and they had a 2 for £25 vinyl thing. So I was like, oh, well, I'll get a couple. So I looked through for ages, and I couldn't really find anything that I was like, I desperately need that. So eventually I just picked out a couple random ones from bands that I like. There were kind of things that I kind of wanted, but like never really thought about. But yeah, I'm glad I own them now. The first one is The Cure, Standing on the Beach, the singles. This is a compilation album they did in the 80s, originally 86. It's got all the band's singles from their very first Killing an Arab in I think 79, 78 that song came out. Everything up to Close to Me from the Head on the Door album. All the singles, so it's got Killing an Arab, Boys Don't Cry, Jumping Someone Else's Train, A Forest, Primary, Charlotte Sometimes, The Hanging Garden, Let's Go to Bed, The Walk, The Love Cats, The Caterpillar, In Between Days, and finally Close to Me. All of which are really good songs. I love The Cure, they're one of my favourite bands. Yeah, I talked briefly about some of their albums. I own Disintegration, which is in my top 10 favourite albums of all time. I own that on vinyl. It's probably my favourite vinyl. Definitely the one I've listened to the most out of any record I own. I've got that, and I've got The Head on the Door as well, which I really, really like. And one of the songs on that was actually in the new version of It, which I finally saw, and yeah, I'll be doing a review of that sometime. But yeah, one of the songs from that album came up and I was like, oh shit, it's The Cure. I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, that song's not on this, sadly. But yeah, it's a really cool compilation. It's sort of quite a famous compilation. I don't know why, it's just considered to be one of the best, like, greatest hits singles records, and it's one that I'm constantly seeing people say that it's a must-own for record collectors. I don't know why. Maybe I'm going to put it on and it's just going to sound better than any other record in my collection, but yeah, I don't know. And this isn't a first pressing or anything. This would be a remastered repressing, I believe. So yeah, it's not going to sound the same as it originally did, but maybe it'll still sound great. I'm looking forward to throwing it on because there's some songs I haven't heard in a long time, some songs that I've only heard once or maybe even haven't heard at all. I don't think I've ever heard Jumping Someone Else's Train, but songs like Killing an Arab and Charlotte Sometimes and The Walk as well, I think I've only actually heard once or twice, so looking forward to throwing them on and listening to them again.